Oh, hello. In today's video, we're going to talk about Star Wars Shatterpoint. And we're going to look at how you build an army for your first game. Now, I touched on this when I first started thinking about Shatterpoint. There's one other Shatterpoint video on this channel. This is a more nuanced take in the time it's taken me to actually complete the hobby for my first Shatterpoint army, which you can see over there on the thumbnail. I think they look pretty good. So, first things first, I haven't played yet. I've got a game in the diary for before the end of the month, anyway. So, before the end of July, I will actually have played at least one game of Shatterpoint, so I will know what the game is all about. But, in order to play your first game, you need an army. So, the first part of the rules of a game that you're interested in playing is obviously going to be the army building, because then you buy the models, you paint them, and then you can take your painted models to play a game. That's like the order of operations, right? You can't decide. It's one of those things. You can't decide whether you really love a game before you invest in it. You have to invest in it, at least have a starter force, to be able to decide whether you really love the game. One of the paradoxes of wargaming. And then, of course, people keep playing the games that they've built an army for, because of the sunk cost fallacy, but perhaps that'll be less of a thing with a skirmish game, who knows. I'm going to get really into what it means to build a Shatterpoint army. If you think you know, there might even be one. There are one or two things in here that I didn't know when I put my roster together that I found out later, so do stick around. But I want to say, before I get really into it, on one level, buying an army is really simple. If you go into your FLGS, you'll find these aren't all the boxes on the thumbnail, on the slide, sorry. These are just a selection of the boxes. You go in and you buy any of the, you buy any 2 squad packs and you mash them together and you've got an army. Now, there are a couple of exceptions there. There's a couple of boxes, I think off the top of my head, the Jedi Hunters and Plo Koon's box, whatever that's called, they come effectively with an extra model. So they have a choice baked in, right? So you can't take the entire box. And then there's You Cannot Run, which is a weird dual box based on the Obi-Wan series on Disney Plus, where you have kind of middle-aged Obi-Wan Kenobi versus like a younger Darth Vader. They have a huge, massive fight. It's really cool. It's the coolest part of that whole show. And they made that into a box with a diorama. Now, it's cool as a product. It's also 60 quid for 2 miniatures that are quite powerful in game. And it breaks this easy army building paradigm. So different people have different thoughts on that. Just flagging up that it exists. And then previewed but not yet released, they're doing a box that just has all bounty hunters in, that you can drop into all the lists that don't actually work themselves as a squad. But by and large, especially if it says squad pack on the box, you can buy 2 boxes, stick them together, and there you go, there's an army. And if you buy the starter box, that contains 4 legal squads. So you've got 2 full-size armies in the starter box, and you can mix them around. Now, you can see some of the prices on there in English money, in Great British Pounds, okay? So these are not cheap. So we're looking at, like, upwards of 80 quid to get a legal force. Now, bit cheaper in America. It's kind of the opposite of Games Workshop, right? So we Brits have the advantage of GW stuff, and we get it a bit cheaper than everywhere else. This is an American product, so it's a bit cheaper in the US, a bit more expensive over here. The prices do weirdly vary, which I think is a bit strange. So you'll see that, like, Cad Bane's box there is $39.99. But some of the others are like $44.99. One's $53.99. So they do vary the price a little bit. I'm not quite sure what that's based on, but they do vary. But you can just buy any 2 of these that you like and stick them together. Right, moving on. So, terminology. Right, you got to have your keywords first. You take the teacher out of the classroom, but you can't take the classroom out of the teacher. So your full army, that's a strike team. Right, so going forward, we're not going to say army, we're going to say strike team. Each strike team comprises of 2 squads. If you've been playing kill teams since the start and you're familiar with fire teams from the compendium for kill team, it's a pretty similar idea. You're building your strike team out of 2 halves, each called a squad. Each squad consists of a primary, a secondary, and a support. A supporting unit is usually, there are more and more exceptions, usually a support is 2 models, right? Which means that your strike team is usually 8 models, 4 from each squad, okay? But made up of 1 secondary unit, usually comprising 2 bases, your actual your secondary, and your primary, right? Each squad, mind you, not strike team, each squad has to be chosen from the same era. So let's look at that first, right? So what are the eras? So the last time I did a video about this, I got pretty confused because the rulebook in places talks about there being 2 eras. There are actually 4 eras detailed in the rulebook, but at the moment, product-wise, there's only really... We'll get into it, okay? Before I move on to eras, I just want to say the bit that I've snipped out here, the other thing to bear in mind is that sometimes they have multiple versions of one character. You can only include one version of each character in your strike team, not squad. So eras are per squad, but the limit on just having the same person, that's for your entire force, your entire strike team. So for example, the example they give here, Ahsoka Tano, you've got Padawan Ahsoka Tano, who's the little teenager Ahsoka Tano that you see at the start of the Clone Wars animated series. And then you've got Ahsoka Tano Jedi No More, which is Ahsoka after she's left the Jedi Order and is working independently. Right, you can't include both of those in your army because they've got the same name. Yes, all the versions of Darth Vader have on their card a special rule to say they can't be in the same strike team as Anakin Skywalker, even though Anakin Skywalker and Darth Vader have different unique names. They have thought of that. Okay, so let's talk about the eras. Defined in the rulebook, there are 4 eras, and what I've done for you that personally I find helpful is I've mapped the eras to the currently available Star Wars media as laid out on the Disney Plus Star Wars website homepage thing, right? So you've got the Fall of the Jedi, which is what it's now called, which is essentially the Clone Wars, right? And in some versions of the rulebook, it was referred to as the Clone Wars. Okay, but it's the Fall of the Jedi, officially. So that's the first trilogy, the prequel trilogy, right? The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, but also the Clone Wars animated series and the Clone Wars movie. So that's all what is now officially termed the Fall of the Jedi, which was at one point just termed the Clone Wars, but there we go. Then we've got Reign of the Empire, and just as an aside, the Reign of the Empire is rapidly becoming my favourite bit of the Star Wars canon in terms of the stories they can tell, because the Reign of the Empire is where the Empire is pretty much all-powerful. They are at the top of their game, they are in charge. Darth Vader is this huge, scary thing that's touring around the galaxy, rounding up Jedi, striking fear into the hearts of people. And I really like the stories that are told during the Reign of the Empire. So in the Reign of the Empire, we've got the Bad Batch animated series. Solo, the film, really underrated, actually. I have watched it now. I've watched almost everything now since... Because I remember when I made the previous video, I was like, I've not seen most of the stuff. I've seen everything on this page now. Okay. Solo, actually a really underrated film. It just happened to come out near unpopular things. So it was actually pretty good, pretty worth a watch. Obi-Wan Kenobi TV show, which I thought was fantastic. Star Wars Rebels, which actually I think is pretty fantastic. Andor, which is unarguably the best Star Wars, despite being the least Star Wars, but it's really good. And then, of course, Rogue One, which is essentially the thing that Andor is a prequel to, right? And then that's the Reign of the Empire, right? So then you got the Age of Rebellion. The Age of Rebellion is basically your dad's Star Wars, okay? So the Star Wars from the 70s, okay? A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. Simple, yeah? And then you got the New Republic Star Wars stories. So these are all the things set after Return of the Jedi, okay? When the Republic is this, which is to say the good guys are in charge of the galaxy, they establish their bureaucracy, and these are all the things that are going on in the background of that. So you've got The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, and Ahsoka. So what you see here, these are the 4 eras currently represented by Shatterpoint. Now, not everything on this list has Shatterpoint miniatures, okay? So there's very little from The Phantom Menace. There's really one box from The Phantom Menace, in that you have Queen Padme and her handmaidens, right? But you've got no Qui-Gon Jinn, that's Liam Neeson's character. You've not got like little Padawan Obi-Wan. You've not got like little tiny slave Anakin. Those aren't things, okay? There is a Darth Maul miniature, but it's most definitely Darth Maul from after he's been cut in half and then resurrected with the robot legs, right? So there's not really much from the Phantom Menace, but there is that one box, the Padme box. There's absolutely everything you could think of from Attack of the Clones, the Clone Wars, and Revenge. Well, not everything you could think of, but there's a lot of stuff, right? In terms of Reign of the Empire, actually, we've really only got the Bad Batch. They're in it, okay? We've got the kind of middle-aged Obi-Wan from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and the sort of young Darth Vader from the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. We have now just, I think, got the Rebel crew from Star Wars Rebels, and they have previewed Grand Admiral Thrawn. Although I am unclear as to whether they're supposed to be set in the Reign of the Empire. I'll find out in a minute when I look through it properly. I actually think that somehow they've ended up with Age of Rebellion as their era, because the Rebels crew exist in the Age of Rebellion. It's very complicated. We haven't got anything from Andor. We haven't got anything from Rogue One. We've got a lot of stuff from the original trilogy, and we're starting to get stuff from Mando as well. So there are bits and pieces missing. What the game doesn't currently support is any of this. So there is logically, if you look at those 4 eras, there are logically 2 more eras now. There's the High Republic, right? So that's where Acolyte is set, which is the new show that's currently airing on Disney Plus, right? And that is set before Attack of the Clones, like 100 years before, I think, right? And that's like, so there's that as an era, right? And then we've got kind of the sequel trilogy era plus Star Wars Resistance, which is after the fall of the New Republic, where the good guys are on the back foot again. Somehow. Star Wars Resistance is perhaps the one piece of Star Wars media that I have not consumed, and maybe it actually bridges the gap and explains how we got to the start of The Force Awakens. But if these are your favourite things in Star Wars, first, I think you're probably statistically an outlier, because this stuff is kind of regarded as the somewhat unpopular bits, okay? But also it's not featured in Shatterpoint yet. Right, they totally could, especially the I don't know if they do the Acolyte, because that's like one show, but especially they could expand into the sequel trilogy if they wanted to. Right, there's loads of characters there that they could do. Okay, all that being said, there are only really 2 eras. Okay, so if you look in the rulebook, you'll see that there's Appendix C. Cross-era units. Most units have only one available era, but cross-era units have multiple eras to choose from while building squads. A cross-era unit is denoted by a split-era icon on its card deck. During squad building, a player may choose either of the shown eras on a cross-era unit's card, or any of the eras that fall between them chronologically based on this diagram. So, like I said, the only thing in Reign of the Empire is the Bad Batch, and they are also in Fall of the Jedi, right? And the only things that they've put out and put into the New Republic era are basically the 2 boxes from Mandalorian. So you've got the goodies box, right? So Mandalorian, Grief Karga, and IG-11, and the baddies box. So you've got Moff Gideon, the Death Trooper escort, and the Dark Troopers. They are both cross-era with Age of Rebellion. So what this effectively means, still, what I said in the previous video is still true. You are still effectively, right now, bearing in mind the game is just over 1 year old, but right now you are still effectively either building your squad in the Fall of the Jedi, i.e. the Clone Wars, right, or the Age of Rebellion, i.e. the Galactic Civil War, right? Another thing to explain that they've effectively retconned, I think, are these cards. So these cards, I think, were printed at the time when they were only going to have 2 eras, the Clone Wars and the Age of Rebellion, right? And that they say have a symbol on them, which is half Clone Wars, now called Fall of the Jedi, and half Age of Rebellion, used to be called Galactic Civil War. Those are, just for clarity, usable and compatible. They actually have 3 eras on now. That's how they've decided to do that. So they are Fall of the Jedi, Reign of the Empire, and Age of Rebellion. Right? Now, I would seek to argue that apart from the I'm fine with generic bounty hunters turning up whenever, no problem. I would argue that all of these things, if they actually wanted to stick to what they were doing, are all really Reign of the Empire things. Right, we don't hear about the Inquisition, and Darth Vader doesn't really exist. This particular version of Darth Vader, obviously, there is a Darth Vader that happens in the Age of Rebellion, and is the nemesis in the 70s Star Wars films, but there's 2 versions of Darth Vader. This particular Jedi hunting version of Darth Vader, all these things should just be Reign of the Empire, right, and a middle-aged Obi-Wan as well, but they wanted to be permissive with it. Permissive is good. I wish they were more permissive, to be perfectly honest. So the way it currently works is these things are in every era except the New Republic, which effectively means that in every era at the moment, because at the moment there are only 2 eras, the Fall of the Jedi and the Age of Rebellion. I hope that makes sense. I've really confused everyone, I'm sure, but I'm trying to explain this as best as I can, because it's weird and needlessly complicated. So here's the rub. Apart from eras, there are no other restrictions. Your squad must have a common era is literally the only restriction. So, and I was trying to be obnoxious, this is a valid list, right? You've got 2 squads. The first squad exists in the Clone Wars era, Fall of the Jedi, right? And contains Jedi Master Plo Koon, right? Savage Opress, and some Night Sister acolytes. Famed for working together, Jedi Master Plo Koon and the Night Sisters, right? And then Squad 2, set in the, the Age of Rebellion, right? Can have Darth Vader, the Emperor's servant, Obi-Wan Kenobi out of hiding, working together, and some Ewoks, just because. And that's a legal army that can all take to the field at the same time, despite being from the 2 different eras. And despite obviously having things on there that wouldn't work together. Now, I quite like that it's almost completely unrestricted, because it lets you do fun what-if scenarios. But then other times you're running into problems with the era restriction. So, for example, if you've got the starter box, you've got Bo-Katan and you've got some Clan Kryze Mandalorians, and you'll notice that they don't have a Mandalorian primary, right? And then when the box came out from the Mandalorian TV show, you might have thought, oh great, I can take the Mandalorian and Grogu, right, Din Djarin, and I can put them with Bo-Katan and the Clan Kryze Mandalorians, like what happens in the TV show, and they can be a happy squad together, but they can't because they're from different eras, which is an flabbergastingly weird decision to me. Now, obviously, it's because they want to make and sell you a different version of Bo-Katan, just like they've got 2 different Darth Vaders representing different periods in Darth Vader's life. They want to sell you a different version of Bo-Katan that represents her when she's more powerful, as she is, years later from when we see her in the Clone Wars. But it's just annoying because that doesn't exist yet, and I know, like, this isn't even something that annoys me because I want to do it, but I know people love Mandalorians, and would love to field at least one squad of all Mandalorians, and it's really hard to do. So it's just weird. Let's talk about points, because I know there's people that love points. They know how the points work, right? So the way this works is that your primary is free. Okay, effectively, you pick a primary, so you pick your like main character, Darth Vader, let's say, and he comes with squad points, right, which effectively is the number of points that you can spend on the secondary and the support for your squad. So this is a cool, in principle, I think it's a really cool idea, because it means if you have a more powerful primary, they can come with a lower number of squad points, and therefore you take worse quality guys to go along with them, right? So that lets you have, because then you're in a universe where you've got characters like Darth Vader, and characters like, I don't know, Padme, right? And you can make them not have to be equivalent to each other for list building purposes. But it's a bit wonky. It's a really good idea in principle. It's a bit weird, and it feels quite arbitrary a lot of the time. And it also feels sometimes like secondaries and supports are pointed weird to make a workable box. Like, they'll decide that a model should have a certain number of squad points, then build their box, and end up going, well, but the things in there are quite good, and then the box is probably balanced, but then when you put some of those cheaper things in with other things, that becomes a bit more odd. Anyway, to try and make my point, this is all the currently available primaries in the game, right? And let's just, for a bit of fun, let's evaluate this for a second. So, Cad Bane comes with 9 squad points. So, what this should be saying to us is that Cad Bane is the worst primary, because he brings the most points for allies. Now, you could say fair enough, because you're looking down here and you're thinking, actually, Cad Bane definitely is probably worse in a fight than all these lightsaber wielders, because, you know, Jedi and Sith are bonkers. Mandalorians are pretty bonkers as well. But is Cad Bane really worse than Queen Padme? Right? What about this named Ewok? What about this named Ewok? What about Hondo? What about, I've not played it, the girl from the EA Star Wars game that's unaccountably got a box? This doesn't quite work for me. And then we go for 8. So 8 is basically the 8 is the default, right? If you're a primary and you come with 8 points, that's the standard amount. Like, you're a standard, pretty badass primary character, okay? So we got Ventress, we got Ahsoka Tano, we got Darth Maul, we got Obi-Wan, we got General Grievous. Like, I can get behind this, okay? We've got your main character, Force users, where, like, so far, when these people fight, it's tense. I don't know who's going to win. We've got General Grievous, okay, Lamara, Plo Koon, the Grand Inquisitor, Mother Talzin, sure. Queen Padme. What? Like, hey? Do we not think any of the other people I just read out could beat Padme in a fight? This fella, the tree shaman of the Ewoks. Again, don't quite understand. Moff Gideon, yeah, fair enough, especially with the Darksaber. Yeah, no, sure. Like, he, maybe not in a straight-up fight, but he's very, very clever, and he would use he's pretty good in a straight-up fight, but he would also use his tactical acumen to stack the odds slightly in his favour if he was coming up against somebody like Darth Maul. Sure. Princess Leia as she appears in A New Hope, on the Death Star, where she's just been captured by Darth Vader. Again, I don't know. I'm not seeing it. Din Djarin, fine, yes. Hunter from the Bad Batch, yeah, okay, no. He's probably is on a par with all the others because he has quite a lot of just like badass normal. Like he is far too super. He is as cool as a lot of these supernaturally powerful characters, kind of unaccountably, but that's just his thing. Fine, that's like the genre of the show. Fine. What's her face from a video game I've not played? Pass. Does she deserve to be up here with these others? Pass. Han Solo. Like, everybody loves Han Solo, but probably not. Han Solo, I'm pretty sure, meets any of these lightsaber users and just sort of dies like a jump. Don't know. Yes. Yeah. Yes to Kanan, right, but probably no to Hera, because most of what makes Hera a badass is her ability to pilot, and this is a game about fighting on the ground. Okay? So, I don't know. And then we've got, like, the 7-point tier, which is the people who are just supposed to be a cut above the 8-point tier, and, like, mostly it works, right? Like, yeah, okay, cool. Anakin, Dooku, Vader again, Luke Skywalker. Yes, they are all a cut above the people that belong here. That's fine, right? Leia, as she appears in Return of the Jedi. Look, I get what they're doing, because having, like, Leia as she appears in Return of the Jedi should bring less squad points than Leia as she appears in A New Hope, because she's become just a random diplomat that got captured, and then that's basically her character growth is getting from here to here. She becomes a badass. Like, that's part of the story of the Star Wars trilogy, is Princess Leia becomes a badass, and by the time of Return of the Jedi, yes, she is a badass. Is she as much of a badass as Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, Count Dooku? I don't really see it. Definitely don't think that this random fatty Ewok chief should be here, and I really don't think that. If you've not seen the Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, Hondo is very similar. He's basically alien Han Solo. He's got the same kind of vibe going on. Except that he stays evil for a bit longer, but ultimately makes the right. Like, his redemption arc is a bit more of a slow burn because he's introduced over a really long running TV show. But he's basically alien Han Solo. Doesn't really deserve to be on what I'm calling the Darth Vader tier. And then is Mace Windu having 6? I understand that Mace Windu is supposed to be extremely powerful. It feels like I'll allow it, but it feels like a bit of a meme, doesn't it? Like, this is the badass motherfucker tier where I have only 6 squad points. So it feels like it almost works and it's almost cool, and then there feel like there are people in the wrong places, and maybe they're there because and I've not properly played the game, so maybe they're there because they have abilities that really buff the rest of the team, that make them that valuable, and therefore they shouldn't have that many points. But on the face of it, it's quite funny just because of how well it almost works as a straight up, like, from what you know of the lore tier list, how powerful should they be, and then there are some people in really weird places. And I really don't understand why Cad Bane has them like this. Their special Cad Bane's quite cool, right? Like, what does, like, Padme, and this is the other thing, Padme becomes quite cool, right? Padme in like in like Attack of the Clones is quite badass. Padme in the Phantom Menace, less so. But they decided that we were getting Phantom Menace Padme in this ridiculous costume and not the really cool Attack of the Clones Padme. That was their choice. right? Anyway, you'll be pleased to learn the game does actually encourage coherent lists via synergy. So, for example, if I take a look at Count Dooku, who is probably my favourite primary, right? Because Count Dooku is just so cool, right? Largely because he's played by Christopher Lee, but he's really cool, right? Because I have a real thing for I really like kind of villains who are very affable and civilized and use the right cutlery. I think that's just the coolest thing, right? That's just the coolest thing. And as you can see on his card, at the start of this unit's activation, choose another Allied Separatist Alliance character, right? So there's one ability that is keying off of the Separatist Alliance characters. And then here, again, with Brave but Foolish, again, it allows a Separatist Alliance character to make a 5-dice attack or whatever it is. So you can see the two of his abilities do things to other units with the Separatist Alliance attack. So they try, and even though there's not a rule saying, look, you pick your army and your army's Separatist Alliance and that's what you're playing and you're stuck with it, they try and put in a thing to nudge you that way, to make sense that what you want to do is shop around in a specific tag. So we can do that. We can, and I'll link to this. This is Shatterpoint DB. I'll link to it in the description, and it lets you filter by tag. So you say, look, these are all the Separatists currently in the game, which is fine, right? Which is fine. There are lots more they could do, but this is fine. And so what you can have. So when you're building a list, you pick it out of these things, and they'll all largely be able to benefit each other, right? So everyone on this list can be buffed by Count Dooku, for example, and the two super tactical droids as well are really good at handing out buffs to things on this list, and some of the things go off the droid tag, which is also like things on here, so it works really well. And that's not to say that you can't, if you want to, you can play the game the other way, and you can just mash stuff together that you think is strong. So you do see this quite a lot. You see Darth Vader, Jedi Hunter, and Obi-Wan Kenobi out of hiding show up in a lot of lists because they are quite good and not in a way that relies on synergy. Darth Vader, Jedi Hunter is basically emblematic of if you want to call it a problem, in that he's just really powerful and he doesn't really synergize with much. So people just take him when they just want to make a powerful list. So here you have a list that I'm sure has some synergy, but it's a list that somebody else put together that's just based on, I've got all the things that I think are powerful. You know, Jango Fett's regarded as one of those powerful secondaries, Magna Guard are regarded as one of those powerful supports. I've just taken the things I think are powerful, I've stuck them together in a thing, and that will do quite well, right? And it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it is another way of playing the game. So you've got those two competing ideas. But personally, obviously, I'm going to play the game quite casually, and I like the lore. So for my first strike team, I've gone, right, Count Dooku's my favourite, so I'll get him. And then I guess we end up buying the starter box because we want some terrain. And there's a Separatist squad in there as well. So there's the Sarge Ventress, Kalani, and the B1s. So I shove those two things together, and that's how I get to my first strike team. Right, apparently Separatists are just really good. People have told me, oh, that's really good. So apparently, entirely through going, I think Count Dooku's cool, I've picked things that are really good mechanically. So it'll be even more funny when I lose like a chump. But there you go. And then what I want to build towards, if I like my first couple of games, probably around Christmas time, I will get the General Grievous box. And then that way I'll be to do some list building, so I'll mix things around a bit. So I'll get rid of Jango Fett, even though apparently he's really good, because I would rather have like more droids. So I'll have Kraken and Kalani, I have the Magna Guard, I have the B1s, and I'll have General Grievous. And that list is more to my taste. And again, people have said it's filthy, which I'm literally just going, these characters are cool, I'll mash them together. But that's what I aim. That's what I'm one more box away. So I end up with miniatures I'm not using, but that's fine. It's a collection of things that you can use in different games, right? I want to have a quick word about the tournament format, just because I'm doing a rundown of list building, and I have in my research, just kind of come across what the tournament format is. Even though I don't really intend to ever take this to tournament game, never say never. I might love it and think it's the best game ever and abandon, like, following Kill Team as hard and start becoming a Shatterpoint guy. You never know. The Shatterpoint tournament format is weird and interesting. In that apparently what you do is you bring not four armies, not four strike teams, 4 squads. And you roster all 4 squads, and you can't move things between their squads. But then you take 2 squads in any combination for each game. I think after you've seen your opponent's roster of 4 squads. Now, what you could do is just make 2 totally different teams, 2 totally different strike teams, and use one sometimes and one at other times. But then it's easy for your opponent to predict what you're likely to take. If you have 4 things that you can combine in all different ways, then it's probably cooler. But you have to use each squad in at least one round of the tournament, which I think is quite interesting. I probably never go to a tournament, but I did have a little play with making a list for using the tournament rule set, just because it's funny. And basically what I learned is that you can fit every Separatist tagged unit plus Cad Bane and some random bounty hunters into a tournament list, so you could buy every single Separatist. Now, I'm not saying you would do that this way, because, like, there are things that you'd want in the same list. So, for example, Cad Bane is a bounty hunter. You'd probably want to put him with his other bounty hunters, and you'd probably want to put him with Django Fett, because then they'd all have the bounty hunter tag, in addition to Django having the Separatist tag, right? And that'd make more of a coherent block. But, right, Cad Bane having his stupid 9 squad points means that that's a nice place where you can fit the 5-point Kalani plus the 4-point B2s, which otherwise it's quite difficult to, like, tessellate them into a list. And likewise, I don't know if I've put a Sarge Ventress and Savage Opress together just because they've both got the Separatist tag and they've both got the Dathomir tag. I don't know if that's good, because I don't really know how the game works. But I just noticed I could tessellate all these things pleasingly into a big long list, so that's fun. And it makes lore sense, right? Because it's Separatists plus people who will happily take the Separatist money and fight for them, right? Makes sense. Makes lore sense. If I'm going to play a Star Wars game, personally, right, even more so than 40k, if I'm going to play a Star Wars game, I'm going to care about the plot of Star Wars while I'm playing my Star Wars game, because that seems to be, like, the entire point. Right? I don't want to cast shade on the people who look at this and go, yes, I can't not do that. I'm definitely doing that. But I will build them. I will build lists that I think apparently I already have by accident. Like, I'll quite happily build lists with an eye to power. I'll tweak this and have that and not this. But I'm never gonna want to be like, yes, Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi together at last. Like, I just don't think it's. If I'm gonna play the Star Wars game, I'm gonna care about the plot of Star Wars. So therefore, and hopefully, and this will be the test, hopefully you can still be good doing that and win games, right? And you don't have to do the Darth Vader and Obi-Wan thing. That will be a poor thing to learn about this game, right? So, final thoughts. Big thanks to Shatterpoint DB, which basically allowed me to make this video. Didn't know about that, and I made the previous Shatterpoint video. It's a much better tool than the one I was using in the last video. I'm going to link it in the description. It's great for just browsing all the cards. Got all the cards on there for free. It's not stealing anything because all the cards are on the internet free anyway, because AMG give away the rules, right? The rulebook's also free on the AMG website, right? I hope you found the web thing interesting. If by some small chance you're looking at this and go, yeah, I actually want to pick up, I've written some Kill Team stuff. If you want to pick up some Shatterpoint stuff, use my Element Games link, and I get a little bit of money back, and it's a decent price on Element, like, for what it is. So yeah, big thank you to all my members who have been enjoying my members only uploads of me playing through a Skyrim playthrough. One member asked for it, and I was gonna play the game anyway, so I guess I'll record it and narrate it. If you want to see that, what I can now happily say is there are many hours of exclusive members content. It's not good, but it's there, winning. But especially Nightfall and Massive Crit, who both subscribed at the highest tier. Thank you very much, gentlemen. That's tonight's video. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back again on Tuesday with a video about something else, and I have no idea what that video is going to be about yet. Absolutely none. I'll see you then. Bye 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 bye. Goodbye. Bye.